Welcome. I'm Stephanie from the Bloom Growth Team, and I'm so glad you're here today for Transform Your Big Dreams into Executable Strategy in just 45 minutes. Today is all about taking your long-term vision, like the really big stuff, and breaking it down into clear, actionable steps that your team can actually execute on a week-by-week basis. This is a working session, not a lecture. By the end of our time together, you'll have built the bones of a strategic framework that connects your 5-year vision all the way down to your daily execution with clarity and confidence. So, if your leadership team is feeling stuck between the dream and the doing, you are in the right place. And since this is interactive, I encourage you to follow along and actually work through your own strategic plan live with us. So get your Bloom accounts ready. A quick heads up before we dive in. Use the chat throughout the session. We'd love to hear your thoughts, reactions, and aha moments. If you have any questions, though, drop them in the Q&A box. It is different from the chat. We'll save time at the end to answer as many as we can. All right, so let's get started. Let's meet the coach who's going to walk you through this strategic journey. I am so thrilled to introduce Steve Thompson, our expert facilitator today. Steve is a Bloom Growth Certified Coach, an ICF Professional Certified Coach, and a Board Certified Coach. He's also been an entrepreneur for over 25 years, including running his own successful physical therapy practice for 22 years before selling it in 2021 for a significant multiple. So for the last 9 years, he's coached leadership teams and entrepreneurs to grow, scale, and sometimes even exit their businesses for the next big thing. What makes Steve especially valuable in a session like this, though, is how focused he is on connecting vision to action. He helps teams get radically clear on where they're going and then build practical strategies to get there. Speaking of which, we'd love to get a quick read on where your team stands. You should see a poll popping up in just one moment. So, how clear is your company on your 5 or 10-year vision? So be honest, there's no judgment here. This will help Steve get a sense of where to focus today. So go ahead, answer that now, and then we'll jump into the agenda next. I'll give about 10 more seconds. It's fun to see which ones are the leaders. It looks like there's a clear leader here. Okay, so leadership knows it, but our teams are fuzzy. We've heard that one before, for sure. All right, so here's our roadmap for the next 45 minutes. We're going to walk through the full arc of strategic planning from vision all the way to weekly execution. Here's what you can expect. We'll start by imagining your 5-year future reality, and then we'll ground that vision in metrics that actually matter. From there, we'll pull together with closer to 3 years out and 1 year out, and then this quarter. We'll also show you how to default into the new Bloom experience. It's cleaner, faster, and a more focused way to build strategy inside the platform. And if you need more help after today, we've got your back. We'll show you exactly how to get support. And then we'll wrap it all up with a live Q&A. So drop your questions into the Q&A box as we go. This is all about building strategy you can actually use, not just big ideas, but frameworks that help your team gain traction every single week. So before we dive in, I have another poll for you. What is your biggest strategic planning challenge? So take a second to respond, or maybe 10. Again, your answers help Steve tailor his guidance today, so we can make this as useful a time as possible for your team. Okay, so some answers here, like connecting long-term vision to daily work, getting team buy-in on the vision, keeping plans realistic and achievable, finding time for strategic thinking. Okay, so just a quick note on how to stay engaged. Use the chat to share ideas, reactions, or connect with each other, and we'll be watching the whole time. But if you have a question, just make sure to use the Q&A box, not the chat. That way we can easily track it, make sure it gets answered. We save time at the end just for that, so don't hold back. All right, ready to roll up your sleeves and actually start building your strategy? I am going to stop sharing my screen now and pass it over to Steve. Take it away, Steve.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to be here with everybody, and I love the interaction. And just if you're wondering, because I've been through these kind of webinars before, and like that first poll, sometimes you kind of feel a little bit funny, like, oh, I don't really have a vision. But you know what? Entrepreneurs are at every single stage that I've ever worked with. So you know what? You're in the right place right now because you're learning how to go from action, or one, how to create your vision to how to make it actually actionable. So that's what I want to help you with today. I want to make sure that if you have something in the Bloom software, some of you may be at different phases where you might have it in the software, some may not. And so we'll talk through how to actually create this and then actually make it happen. So this is the fun part for me. Um, I always like to kind of like frame what we're doing here in a way that can kind of make sense. So I'm out in California. And I think of this process of the 5 year future reality, your 3 year vision, your 1 year annual goals, and your quarterly priorities are a lot like planning a trip. So let's say, for example, I'm in California and my big vision is I want to go to the East Coast. Now, I could go a lot of different places. I can go Florida, Washington, D.C., New York. But if I'm more specific and more measurable to what that plan is, then I can start to figure out which highway I'm going to take. And that's really what that first part is. That's your 5 year vision, is you need to know where you're going. And the next part, which is your 3 year vision, is really about creating the excitement around the trip. So let's say you're going to pile into the car with your kids. If you don't tell them where you're going, guess what you're going to get probably within the first hour? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? But if you can enlist them in the planning of it, you can enlist them in the reality of it, they'll start to get excited. Okay. The 1 year goals are about, hey, what are the things that we're going to see in the first, second, or third day? It's kind of to keep them engaged in the short term. And then your quarterly priorities are all about, hey, let's look at the next turn. Let's look at the first, half of this trip. So it's really about planning your trip. So hopefully that analogy makes a little bit of sense for where we're going. So if you're ready to jump in and you have your Bloom software open, this is awesome. Okay. So let's talk about the first thing, which is your 5 year future reality. You know, um, I think a lot of people used to have 10 year realities, but I think the way that our world is changing and business is changing, that's almost too far away. Because if you think back, if we're talking about 5 year future reality, if you think back 5 years ago today, where were you? Did you think that you were going to be at this point? Maybe you were, maybe you didn't. Maybe you had a plan and maybe you executed, maybe you found it. So the whole thing is like we need to make this as tangible as possible. So what makes a really good 5 year future reality? So if you have it in your software, take a look at this and sort of kind of analyze your 5 year future reality as I go through some of these criteria that I like to share with people. If you don't, take notes on this. Maybe have a notepad done, things that you want to put together as you develop this. So really, your 5 year future reality is kind of like what we call the North Star of your company. It's where you're going, it's your direction. Some people call it the compass, some people call it the shining star that we're going to hit. It's whatever you want to call it that makes it real. It's going to drive you to your future. Now, because 5 years is a ways away, it's going to be a little bit broader, but it's got to be something that's meaningful to you, your leadership team, and your staff, because you're going to share this at some point. And to enroll people in the future, it needs to be something that engages them. So it's got to be meaningful. It's got to come from the heart. A lot of times I see entrepreneurs create 5 year future realities that are just metrics, and there's not a lot of meaning behind it. It's almost like every time you create something, you want to have a why behind it. Why are we going here? What's the purpose? What will this satisfy? Um, I'd always like to challenge leadership teams to think like this 5 year future reality is supposed to be a bigger, better version of you, of your company, of all your staff. So think big, challenge yourself to get to like 10xing yourself and or 10xing the business, whatever is realistic for you. I always challenge people, if you've got one, look at it and say, does this future reality excite me? Does it make me nervous? Does it make my palms sweat? If it does, that's the right one because it's got to excite you, got to get you up in the morning and motivate you. It's really advisable that it's specific and measurable. So putting something that's sort of vague, like we want to grow. Eh, that's not gonna that can be exciting for some. It doesn't really tell anybody really what you're trying to do. So, we want to grow to, you know, three times our revenue. We want to increase profits to X amount. That's where it really becomes exciting and measurable because once you get to it, you want to know that you've arrived. So going back to my analogy of taking a trip, if I say I just want to go to the East Coast, I could end up in a lot of different places. If I say I'm going to go to Washington, D.C., I'm going to go to the mall, I'm going to go to the Capitol building, all that, then it gets very specific and you can get behind it. And you'll know that you've arrived at that point. So that's the important piece. All right, so now we've talked about what it is and some of the criteria for it. How do you get there? And so if you've got it in your software already, I would just say take notes and just really use that criteria and say, does this really speak to me? If it does, fantastic, you're right on track. If there's some things that you can tweak on it, great. If you don't have it yet, all right, let's roll up our sleeves. And here's what I advise you guys to do, or here's a suggestion of what you can do. It was with your leadership team is first of all, get out of your office, go somewhere that's offsite so you don't have any distractions when you're trying to create this because if you have people that come in knocking on the door, you're just not going to be able to focus on the future. So try to get away. And each leadership team member, however many you have, I always say, you have each person individually come up with 3 to 5 statements of what they see as the 5-year future reality of the company. Take 5 minutes or so and start jotting down ideas for what those are. Then, if you have a good facilitator or a good integrator, have somebody up on the board and then go through one by one with the leadership team and have them share their best idea and you write them up on the board. So you're going to get 10, 15 different ideas of what your 5-year future reality is. And it's not just necessarily up here, it's now going to be on paper. So after this exercise, you're going to have 10, 15 or so different ideas. Look for commonalities. Look what really resonates for you. Pull out key pieces of that 5-year future reality that now you can craft into one statement. Okay. When you craft that one statement, think about now, start to craft it in the way, and you may need to kind of refine this and look at it in terms of what would excite us every single day so we show up. What would excite our team? So they would start to want to help and contribute. So initially, what you might come up with is profit goals, revenue goals, those kind of things. But maybe let's start flavoring this towards what would get the team to be able to step up and say, hey, I want to help. So that's basically how we approach doing the 5-year vision. And through that process, you're going to come up with a powerful statement that's going to be able to excite you guys that you can all agree on. Because from this point, like Stephen Covey says, begin with the end in mind. You're now creating the end point, which is 5 years from now. From here, we're going to build backwards to make it more and more specific, more and more actionable. All right. So if you have any questions, throw them in the question and answer, but that's really kind of how you tackle that 5-year future reality. Next is the 3-year vision. Now, this one's kind of fun because this is sort of like a giant step from this point here today towards that 5-year, almost like the halfway point. So where do you want to be 3 years from now? That it's the halfway point on this journey. So, again, going back to my road trip, halfway for me would be, let's say, Midwest, Chicago. I could stop by and visit some of you guys who are in the Midwest here, who put your names up there. So here's the practical steps is that when you start to craft this, have your 5-year vision up and so you can see it. Hopefully then you've created some metrics that you can help you identify that, is it specific enough? What are the things that we want to achieve So then you can start to create something that's maybe half the way there. That will get you towards your 3-year vision. There's a couple different ways you can approach this too, is that your 3-year vision, I want you guys to kind of think about this, is not so much, again, as we're trying to take this big wide vision and narrow it down to here. In this middle part, this is where the 3-year vision becomes really important, because this is what you're going to use to enroll people in your future. It can be your thing that you interview and share and get people, future employees, as you grow, you get them excited about where we're going. You can look at the details of your 3-year vision from a couple different viewpoints. You can look at it as employee focused, like what will we be able to accomplish if we grow and we achieve what we're going to do? What will be exciting to our team? What, maybe that's more benefits. Maybe that's growth and leadership development within. Maybe it's, professionally adding new programs, or whatever it is that that your staff would go, wow, I really want to be here. This is what's going to build your employee retention. If you have an exciting 3-year vision and they're involved in it and they're engaged in it, awesome. Then they're going to be really want to move the company forward. So you can look at it from an employee point of view. You can also look at it from the 5-year vision point of view. So the specifics of, let's say you want to, if I share my screen here for a second, kind of forgot to do that. So where you find all this in the software, I'm going to take a little pause to go back, is here's my entry screen when I come in and I go to the plan. There we go. So here is the 5-year future reality of this company, is to make 70 million with a 30% net profit, which probably to the leadership team, this looks exciting, but to the rest of the staff, does it make sense? So you might want to craft the statement to be a little bit more broad. Like, what was it Steve Jobs said? Is that his vision, future reality of the iPod is to have 1,000 songs in your pocket, and that gets people excited about something, right? But if we go over here in the 3-year vision, and you can edit it right in the software by up here, clicking at the top, the edit mode. So you set your future date of 3 years from now. So let's say it's, the end of the year 2028. These are more some metrics, but what does it look like? This is what you're crafting right here. What is this 3-year vision? Is that, these are the 5-year vision components of it. Like we want 80 new semi trucks. We want 100 small trucks. We want a new facility on the West Coast. But then down here is where you're looking at more from the staff point of view, is everyone is mentally and physically healthy. This is a great place we have a great place to work certification, and so see if you can think about, like, what is it that if I'm sitting in an interview next week that I can craft and I can sell somebody on where we're going, that's going to get them excited. Plus, this is about getting your team that's currently here excited about doing this. So hopefully that helps. So the exercise to do is very similar to the first one, but instead of kind of going round robin and just giving the best, is what I would do is take 5 or 10 minutes, have each leadership team member write down maybe 3 to 5 of the 5-year vision, 5-year future reality focused things that you might create, and 3 to 5 employee based. And then go around the room and each person shares their best 5 and put them up on a board. So here, after that, let's say you've got 6 people, you're going to have 30 different items that you can now start to choose and say which ones most excite us. So that's really where you're filling in what does it look like, and to make your 3-year vision really exciting. All right, how are we doing on time? We're doing good, Stephanie? Awesome. And hopefully this is starting to make sense for you guys. All right, next, now we're going to take this trip from the 5-year future reality. We're going to narrow it down to the 3-year vision. So we've got this. And from here, you can create your metrics. And I think last week, Aaron covered metrics is, so if our goal is 70 million in our 5-year, halfway there, 20 million might be. That might be a little bit of an underestimate, but it may be based upon some of the staff here. So think about metrics that you can add in there to know that you're going to achieve this. That might be your halfway point. So it may vary. You might project growth more in years 4 and 5. So that's why, this one, the revenue is 20 million. And over here in the 5-year, it's 70 million. Now from here, we're going to narrow it down a little bit more. And so to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to go over here to the short-term focus, and we're going to go in here to the 1-year plan. This is where, it's funny when I work with entrepreneurs, what happens is when it starts to get closer and closer and closer to where you are today, people want to get more and more like KPI and metric driven. KPIs are great, but really what this is, these are annual goals. These are the programs or the activities or the steps you're going to take that are going to help you achieve that 3-year vision and that 5-year future reality. So, like for example, if you look at some of these priorities for the year, is in order for them to grow, they need to do sales training process, get their sales training processes documented and in execution. They may need to create a data and analytics team. They all the data are going to be based, all the decisions are going to be based on the big data. And we want to make 2 new relationships. So these are the programs or activities that are going to take you to the next level. This is where you're going to start to really see the reality hit. So in this case, this might be a little bit of a push of 12/31/25 if you're doing it today. So you may want to set it out 1 year from now. But if you think about the 3-year is like, okay, now take a third of that, and now you're going to be able to start setting some of your KPIs. So really where we are with this annual the annual goals is again about trying to be more and more specific, more and more strategic. And I think that word's really important to remember for you as your leadership team is that you need to be strategic. You need to have your head up and looking ahead, not tactical so much like what are the specific things we're going to do in terms of metrics and just solely make it about metrics. This is about doing. This is about the things that are going to help you accomplish, that are going to set you up. I've heard it say like, what are you going to do today that's going to help you achieve tomorrow? These are more actionable programs that you're going to create, right? These are also too organizational wide goals, and that can be often a trip that I see is that leaders tend to stay tactical, and so when they're creating these annual goals, they stay in their department and they stay within their one little group that they're managing, and that's what they think that they're going to do. I encourage every leadership team to raise yourself up to that 30,000-foot view and say, where do we want to be in a year from now? What do we want to be able to accomplish? And what does the company want to accomplish? Let's put the company first, because the next 2 steps that we're going to get into is where we start to get very, very specific with how to turn this into an actionable thing that happens every week. So again, just to recap on here, to create these, here's your action step. If you have these in the software, great. Take a look at them and just ask yourself the question, is this a program? Is this an action? Is this something that will help us move forward and get to our goals? If not, if it's more of a metric, tweak it a little bit. Say, what will we do to actually achieve that metric and make it more of a plan or an actionable step that you can take and start to build on for each phase of this growth. And again, think about your staff too. What is it that will get them excited for? So your vision is really about in creating and enrolling a future that everybody wants to be here, right? All right, so you're now sitting in this 1-year plan situation, and what again, take 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes for the leadership team to say, what are the things that we need to do? Have each person jot down 5 to 10 ideas. Then go around to the room with each leadership team member and say, give me your best 3 or give me your best 5. So, and then put them up on the board. Once you have them up on the board, you'll have, probably 10, 15, 30 ideas. Who knows? Depends on the size of your leadership team. Ideally, what we want is maybe 3 to 5. So we're going to have to narrow them down. So you then start a voting process. Is maybe each person on the leadership team votes for, I think number 1, 5, and 7 are the best ones. And then go around and have a vote. And you'll start to see where the unification around the goals begin to happen, where everybody starts to, the ones with the most votes tend to be what everybody's agreeing upon. So you're going to get the most excited about that. So that's how I would take that into the actionable steps for this. Um, okay. Now, you still with me here? And we're now getting more and more specific in our action steps. And here's where we're going to start really getting to kind of putting the feet to the pavement. We've been sort of in the clouds here, 5 years out, 3 years out, 1 year out. Now we're looking at our quarterly priorities. And these are, if you can think about it this way, is that you look at your 1 year plan and you say your quarterly priorities, what is it that we can work on in the next 90 days to move us forward 25% towards one of these programs or one of these goals in our annual goals list. So taking the very small step of, this is what I call these 90-day sprints. That's just my terminology because I couldn't focus on when I ran my business more than 6 months. So I had to make it much smaller. I had to make it 90 days. And I had to even from there break it down. And we'll talk about how you can do that. But these are the most important things that you as a leadership team and you as a company can start to push forward. And these are leadership team. These are not necessarily departmental yet. These are leadership team strategies that you want to put into action, achieve these goals to move you 25% ahead towards your 1 year plan. Okay. And again, they have to be exciting. They have to be growth opportunities, not just metrics. Metrics, we can achieve a metric, but the metrics are just numbers, right? There has to be a meaning behind it. There has to be a process, a plan, a program, something that's going to get us there. We need to know the how, right? Um, so when you're ready to do this quarterly priority process, I would actually make sure that you flip back and forth between the 5 year future reality, 3 year vision, and short-term focus, because even with the 3 year vision, there may be something that you need to get started with now to help you achieve and get you on track for those. What you'll notice in the software is you'll see some initials, and this is where someone is assigned to that quarterly priority. Hold on, let me get there. So when you start your process of the quarterly priorities, what I would do is I would actually start with this 1 year plan. Now here in this company, we've got five priorities for the year. Have one person take one priority each or two priorities each. So in this case, Raymond's going to take one. So number 4 here is 2 big new relationships. Raymond's taking one to establish at least 3 new big relationships. So everybody on the leadership team then takes one of these priorities, these annual goals, as his or her responsibility to achieve in this next 90 days, or at least move forward on at least 25%. So start there. That's the first place, is make sure that there is at least one quarterly priority that relates to one of your annual goals. That will make sure that you're staying focused on achieving your 1 year goal, your 3 year vision, and your 5 year future reality. You're heading in this direction. So everything sort of funnels down to this point. So once you've established that, okay, Raymond's going to take number 4, Thomas is going to take, one of these, Becky's going to take one. Now you can then meet as a group as you're sitting around the table and say, all right, let's start coming up. What are the opportunities that we have, or maybe an obstacle that if we tackled that and we focused on that, and if we completed it and got through it, that would push us towards our annual goal. So take 5 or 10 minutes and look at your 1 year plan, your 3 year vision, your 5 year future reality, and start listing out the things that if you accomplish those activities in this quarter, that would move you 25% more towards your future in the next year. You might come out of this with, let's say you've got a leadership team of five and everybody comes up with five quarterly priorities. You might end up with 25 to choose from, which is an awesome place to be because you're identifying all of the opportunities and obstacles and things that you can then tackle to move this company forward. Then what I would do in the next step is go back to that voting system. All right, we've got 25 up here. Everybody gets 5 votes. Pick your 5 best. And then you're going to start to see which ones tend to rise to the top, which one tends to be the agreed upon bigger priorities. So let's say after your voting process, you've already got 5 because there are 5 quarterly priorities that everybody's chosen from the annual goal. So you've got 5. And I recommend to leadership teams, especially depending on the size and your activity level, is choose between each person taking 2 to 3 quarterly priorities each quarter. So you have the ability to potentially have 15, if you have a leadership team of 5, 15 quarterly priorities. Now, all of them may not be company based. So figure out which ones of these priorities will help move the company forward. If they're not moving the company forward, what we're going to get into next is creating a departmental. So if someone is in charge of a department, maybe that quarterly priority is now a department quarterly priority that can be helped by the rest of the team. So now you're taking this big vision and you're sharing the plan down to more and more specific things. Now you're going to start bringing your teams in to this. So these quarterly priorities can be company based or they can be departmental based. The company ones need to be the highest level, ones that you can achieve. Again, I suggest probably 5 to 10 quarterly priorities that are company based and maybe 2 or 3 that are departmental based. So hopefully that helps to kind of narrow it down that if you have a leadership team of 5, you're not tackling 30 different initiatives because most likely you won't get them done. Let's get really specific on the most important things that will move this company forward. Now, how do you make these actionable week by week by week? Is when you get into your meeting list, and we're going to switch over to this screen, is your quarterly priorities are going to be carried over from your plan. And where you see this little icon is from this button. So as you create your quarterly priorities in the software, you're going to click and say add it to the plan. So wherever you see this little icon, that means that is a company-based quarterly priority. So Angela has a company-based one, and these are either hers or her department's. So you can fill them in here and you can look at them this way. How do you make them actionable week by week? That comes down to the O&O list. Is your opportunities and obstacles when you start to work on these every week, you're going to bring up your obstacles and opportunities that are related to your quarterly priorities. So there's going to be an actionable step or a to-do that relates specifically to the quarterly priorities that you've established. I always try to kind of tell teams, like, think about it as a quarter is 13 weeks. If you have a quarterly priority, what is it that you could move 10% per week to achieve that quarterly priority? So is this O&O or this to do something that will move you forward 10%? So 10% times 10 weeks, you have 13 weeks in a quarter. That gives you a chance to have a vacation, to miss a meeting or whatever, and it gives you a little bit of a cushion to be able to achieve it. But think in terms of your O&Os or your to-dos are things that are going to move you forward at least 10% towards your quarterly priorities. So hopefully that makes sense. The other thing that you can do, which is really nice in the software, is if you see down here, is you can create milestones. So sometimes what I've seen with leadership teams is that they'll create a quarterly priority, but it'll just sit there until the very last week, and then they scramble to try to get it done. A milestone can be something that is a short-term goal. It's a 10, like maybe you have 10 milestones that you set up as the 10% per week. So and if we take Angela's update of new training process. So it might be the first 10% is the first steps, first three steps. The next 10%, which is due a week later, is the next three or four steps. So you chunk this down into smaller and smaller actionable items to help you then achieve your quarterly priority. So the software has a lot of ability to help you focus on, what is this, the company plan? Is this a departmental plan? Can you create milestones to be able to make it more actionable so you stay even more accountable to this? So, but basically think about this is as you get into the meetings, your O&Os are really driving you towards your quarterly priorities. And that's how you can hold accountability within your weekly meetings to make sure you're staying on track, that you don't get pulled off on the shiny object syndrome or the something that's a little bit urgent. So maybe there's something that's a little bit fun, but these again are the most important steps that you want to move forward to achieve the growth that you want to achieve. If you don't have a future vision, this is some of the things, like if we go back to over here in the plan, here's where I've seen some companies have a little bit of a pitfall is if you don't have a future reality or you don't have a 3-year vision, you maybe don't even have a 1-year plan. Most likely you're just going to keep spinning and doing the same things over and over again, and your growth is going to stagnate. Really push yourself to think bigger. Start here with this 5-year future reality. Think of where you can take your company to in the next 5 years if everything goes great. Now, can be a little bit challenging because who knows, markets can change and that kind of stuff. But if you don't put a plan out there, there's a great phrase that I love is that if you fail to plan, plan to fail. So if you don't have any plan in place, guess what? You're going to probably be wondering why your company's not growing, why staff is turning over. This whole process is about growing the company, growing the people. There was a survey that I read recently that said something to the effect of 94% of people leave because they don't feel like they have anywhere to go within a company. And part of your responsibility as owners or leaders is to create those opportunities for growth. That's what builds in retention. Now, we all know this is a tough market, that staff is hard to find, staff is hard to keep. A lot of people turn over and change jobs every 2 to 3 years. We want to enroll everybody in a future. Imagine if you could get everybody on your team still here after 5 years and achieving goals and actually even growing your team, doubling it with exciting, young, bright people that are all aligned. Because if you don't have a plan, you're going to be going in different directions. And that's what I've seen is that you'll just keep spinning in different directions. You don't know where you're going. So I really encourage you to make sure you work on this phase of it, because every decision that you make from this point forward, if you're looking towards your future, will be the thing that drives you. So hopefully that was helpful. You got some step-by-step actionable items. Yeah, and I'd love to kind of hear comments and questions. So, Stephanie, I think we have another poll, don't we? Or
Well, you know what? I don't think the last poll worked. So let's give it another go. I think
let's
that's a
give it
good,
another go.
yeah,
I'll stop
uh,
sharing.
great. And before I start that poll, just some feedback from me personally. I really like the 5-year plan versus 10-year. Because, like you said, it's become an economy where people used to work in decades and now it's like 2 or 3 years and job turns over. So, what used to work with a 10-year plan since the last 5 years really doesn't work anymore. So, you've inspired me to go back to my personal Bloom Growth account where I'm the CEO of my life and adjust that to maybe a 5-year vision. Okay.
I
So,
love that you said that, because this is a process we talked about doing for our businesses, right? We can do this for ourselves. We are the CEO of our own lives, and so we can create great lives for ourselves and use these same tools, use the software the same way. Let's create bigger futures for everybody.
yeah. Well, if anybody wants info later, just hit me up because I have a leveling up, stressing down meeting using my Aura ring for measurables and making a better life. Okay, so let's give that poll another try. Okay, so it should say on your screen, and let me know if it doesn't in the chat. Uh, what is your biggest strategic planning challenge? And there's a couple of answers here.
And
Again,
this, what I'm seeing too, Stephanie, just from
yeah.
my point of view, is I see that these are the results. So almost like, can we go back to the
Oh,
actual selection piece to see?
let's see. Because again, I tried doing it earlier and it wasn't super friendly. Relaunch poll. It is an option.
There we go. Yep.
There it is.
There it is.
Thank you,
Good.
Steve.
Excellent. Yep.
Yeah, so some good ones here that we hear a lot of: connecting long term vision to daily work, getting team buy in on the vision, keeping plans realistic and achievable. That's an important one.
Hmm.
And finding time for strategic thinking. How does one do that? That's the next question. Okay, give that another 10 seconds or so. You know what? I'm going to call it and I'm going to say that they're all pretty close to equal. There wasn't one that really
Mm.
stuck out. So I think you hit the nail on the head with these answers.
Yeah, getting the buy-in, team buy-in on the vision. It's funny. Like I think I remember that in the first poll, there were a couple of responses that I have the vision, but I haven't shared it. And sometimes what happens is that owners get fearful of sharing the vision, that they feel that the staff won't resonate it with it. But I think if you take a moment and look at that 3-year vision step, that's the point where you're actually really going to be speaking to the team. You're really speaking to what is it that they might want? What is it that they keep asking for? And if you now show that you're listening to that and you actually have a plan for it, now they're going to get engaged. They're going to, because most of the time when an owner or a leadership team creates a plan or a vision statement, whatever, is that it's doesn't relate to the staff. So this 3-year vision piece is really that important piece that's going to connect the team to the plan or the vision.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I mean, again, in my own personal bloom growth, like how do you share that vision with the people around you? That's
Mhm.
something I can relate to. Okay. So we're going to get back to a couple more questions, but before we do, I'm just going to share a couple things here. I wanted to share with everybody uh, something called Bloom Growth Accelerate. It's something that we created this year, and it's designed for organizations and teams that are looking to enter full growth mode, increase transparency, and strengthen accountability across the board. And if that's for you, you can just book a clarity call with us and we'll help you figure out if coaching is the right fit. Spoiler, it usually is, and what could growth
Yeah.
could look like for your team. It's so important to have someone there in your corner as you're growing your business. And that's what Steve does here. And I know you could speak to this. Like, Accelerate is a great way to get started at a very friendly
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to kind of expand on this because I think this sort of answers the question, like what's next for us? What do we need? And so the way that I would kind of say, of the 3 different choices that you have, and all of them are amazing and they will help you move you forward, is if you're on the software and you're using it, running your weekly meetings, and you've got the plan figured out, the meeting accelerator is a great first step to have a coach come in, sit in on your meeting, kind of in the background, take notes on ways that you can improve this meeting, things you're doing well and things you can improve. And it just helps you become more efficient. So when I've worked with clients on this, after working with them, their meetings kind of increased in effectiveness probably tenfold, is what they told me. Is because They weren't sure what some things meant. They weren't sure if they were focusing on the right thing. And getting that feedback from the coach can really help make your actionable items and your weekly events even more effective. Let's say you realize, you know what, we really want to dive into this. We want to get full into the Bloom system, but we don't know necessarily how to do it. We need a little bit of support, but we've got a good integrator and a good facilitator on our team. That's where that leadership team accelerator comes in. And what this is Bloom will give you the ways to implement this entire program, but you'll meet with a coach an hour before and typically a half an hour after you deliver the Bloom meetings to your team. And it helps you as the facilitator get very refined in how you're delivering it. So it'd be like a coach coming in, but you are doing it within. And it's a really valuable program. And it's for us very self-directed and self-motivated team. This is a great choice. The full coach engagement is we know we want to grow. We don't really know how to get there. We don't really have the team together. This is where having a coach come in and helping you implement this and asking you questions and challenging your thinking and holding the accountability in these meetings to really help you grow. I've done all three of these, and all three of these are valuable to teams at different levels. So kind of ask yourself, it's like, what do we need right now? Do we need more help with our weekly meetings to be more effective? Do we need help getting an operating system in to our work world? And I think we can do it ourselves, but we just need a help. That's the leadership team accelerator. If you really feel like, you know what, we need some help, period. That's where the full coaching engagement comes in.
Like that. And while you were saying that, it reminds me of anyone trying to grow a muscle or learn an instrument. Like you can get there by watching YouTube and doing like a YouTube workout, or oh, am a viola player for the last 10 years. So you could do it on YouTube, but like each level where you add that support, you're going to get there faster and feel more
Yeah.
fluent in it.
Yeah. And one quick comment on that, it's like you look at professional athletes, most of them have an average of 10 coaches. So to get to their highest level, they have a nutrition coach, they have a fitness coach, they have, a mindset coach. Everybody can benefit from coaching. So it depends on where you feel like you need the most.
Yes, definitely. 10. I didn't know it was that many.
Yeah.
I wonder how many Jason Momoa has. Okay.
Probably
So
quite a few.
before we wrap up, we've heard from a few of you that your accounts keep bouncing back to the older version of Bloom. So this slide right here will fix that. Take a screenshot of it if you need it. What you need to do is just log out and log back in again. It's like the old turn it off and on again method. You could delete any old bookmarks because that might be going to the old one. And then you can go to the new site, which is here on number 3 or number 2, I should say. And once you're in the new version, go ahead and bookmark that one for next time. And then if you ever need help using Bloom, here is exactly where to go. The resource center in the bottom left corner, and you click on knowledge base. It's listed first because it's where you can find quick step-by-step articles to solve most of your questions fast. And there's videos in there as well, but you can also find how to contact us and how to schedule training sessions. That's all included with your account. Okay. So we've covered a lot of ground today, and we're going to open it up for Q&A. And if you haven't already, go ahead and drop your questions into the Q&A box, not the chat, the Q&A box, and you'll find that at the bottom of your Zoom screen. That helps us keep things organized and make sure we don't miss anything. And we'll answer as many questions as we can in the time we've got left. And if we don't get to yours, don't worry, we'll follow up after the session with answers. So we'll take a look at what's come in. And I also have a few here as well that I've been writing down. So as those come in, let me ask you my questions.
Okay.
So, Steve, how do you know, like really know, which is a department goal and which is a leadership
Mm,
goal? Wait for it. So, if the department goal ideas are feeding off of your leadership team's plan, wouldn't they all be company goals? Because they all move the company forward. And what would be an example of a purely department based goal? So the first question was, how do you
Mhm.
know which is which?
Great question. What I think what I would do is look at it from the point of view is when you create your first list of the quarterly priorities and say, is this almost going to take more people to accomplish or more, and it's going to have more attention to cover more departments? That's most likely a company-wide or a leadership team goal. The departmental ones tend to be more specific. So, like I said, I was a physical therapist, right? So, and I owned a physical therapy company. So, to use the example would be company-wide goal would be, hey, we need to, increase revenue to 2 million, 5 million a year, whatever that goal is. A departmental goal can be a small step that, let's say, the physical therapist can actually take on as a goal. Like, we need to maximize our billing. We need to get X number of patients in each per week. That's more focused on the smallest level of the company that are actionable by the individual team members to draw them in to help to achieve the bigger goal of the revenue. Does that make, hopefully that clarified it. It's like, think about it as like, if it's a small enough bit of action, it's probably more of a departmental goal. If it's a big broad that's going to involve multiple departments working together, it's probably a leadership team goal.
Got it. Because, I look at Bloom growth counts a lot over the last several years. And what I see a lot of is on the plan for a department plan, they will
Mhm.
have their goals, and every single one of them will be a company goal. Uh, do you see situations where that is the case?
Yes, I do. And I think the I guess the problem with that is that that's where you have the leadership team is thinking too tactical. They're not strategic. They don't have their head up looking forward in the direction that they want to go. So if that's the case, if it's too like I just think again, if it's too specific to a person, then it's probably near into that departmental goal. So maybe just take a step back and say, what if we achieve this, what would this help? What would this help grow to keep kind of getting bigger in terms of, let's say everybody on this team, let's say everybody had a specific goal and we hit this number of sales targets. What would that achieve? And that might be more of then shifted towards more of the quarterly goal that way, the quarterly priority that way.
Awesome. Okay. I have more questions, and there weren't other ones. So I'll just keep
Okay.
going.
Okay.
Okay. You had the list of what does the future look like? It was on the right side of the screen on the first page of your plan, and you had multiple bullet points, maybe like 10. Uh, and by the way, I love that. If anybody wants to know, I'm motivated by company swag. So that my future looks like a uniform in 5 years. But you had like 10 items. Is there like a sweet spot for the amount of items on that list?
Great question. What I usually work with teams to say is like if you can have 7 to 10 that speak to both the 5 year future reality and also the employee base, because then you're hitting on both targets. If it's at five, there's almost not enough to be employee based and bigger vision place. So 10 seems to be a nice little sweet spot. More than that, it kind of gets a little foggy and becomes less important.
On that vein, when you're coming up with it's your leadership team and you're coming up with your 1 year goals, but maybe more focused on the quarterly goals because that's something that's coming up sooner. Uh, does does the amount of people in the room in that meeting determine like a sweet spot for the amount of goals on that list as well, or is it just as far as your
Yeah.
imagination can bring you?
I think when you're thinking of like the more and more specific things, like when you start getting more than 3 to 5, of them, like the annual goals, it then becomes they get diluted. Like the annual goals, you kind of you may miss one. 3 to 5 seems to be a nice little sweet spot to really focus on. Probably 5. If it's a bigger company, a bigger group, there might be more than, let's say, maybe 7, but 5 seems to be a really nice spot. If it's more than 5, kind of like when we also too when we build our core values, 3 to 4 to 5 tend to be the right sweet spot number of core values, because beyond that people can't think, they can't process that many. So the more specific, the more focused they are, the fewer they are, then the more likely you're going to achieve them.
Awesome. So, on that note as well, it leads to the next one. I've seen teams that have 3 to 5 goals per quarter per person, and then
Mhm.
they're also in a department meeting, and then they have different goals for that meeting. It seems like too much to me, honestly, just based
Mhm.
on what I know of my own personal workload. And but is there a sweet spot for that as well? And like considering like if they're in multiple departments or meetings.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Generally, I think each person on the leadership team probably should have no more than 3 priorities, and that's a combination of departmental and company quarterly priorities. So a person might have one quarterly, one company priority, but that will allow them to take on 2 departmental. They might have 2 um, company, so then that makes them only, they really only should take 1 departmental, because I think again that 3 to 5 tends to be the magic number. 3 being for the, especially these quarterly priorities, because these are big programs to actually get accomplished. If you tend to do add too many, you tend to get less done. So if you think about it, like if you had 3 and you had to divide up your energy, you're getting at least 33% of your energy going to each one. If you have 10, you only have 10% of your energy going towards each priority. So the likelihood that you're going to get something done drops.
That is so true. And it was a bit of a leading question, too. I saw a quote on the internet, so it must be true, that 100 years ago, the vocabulary word priorities did not exist
Nope.
because what is a priority? It's the most important thing, not things. So I like
Yeah.
that, just really scaling it down. Okay. So uh, that will wrap up the questions. Thank you for answering all of those. I get those
Hmm.
a lot when I meet with different clients. So I'm sure that will help everybody here too.
Good.
So we are almost out of time. And I want to thank you so much for spending this hour with us. We hope you're walking away with clarity and a real strategy you can start using right away. I know I am. So, one last ask before you go. When this session ends, a quick 3 question anonymous survey will pop into your browser. It means a lot to us and it helps us keep improving. So, please fill that out. And again, big thanks to Steve, whichever side of the screen you're on to me. And thank you to all of you. And oh, someone raised their hand. I'm going to pause and take that. Uh, maybe, oh, I don't know how to do that. So if you raised your hand, please put something in the chat or the question and answer, and I'll answer your question. I'll make sure to. So that's a feature in Zoom I have to learn. So again, Uh, let's see. Oh, it was an
Yeah.
applause. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So, thank you, Steve, and thank you to all of you. And take care and keep growing with Bloom.
Yeah. Good luck, everybody. Create your plan and go execute.
Awesome. I will. Bye.
Okay. Bye bye.